Greetings and welcome to our daily Devo for Thursday, the 5th of October. Today, our Devo's title is Jesus on Status in the Kingdom of God. Jesus on status in the Kingdom of God. Matthew 18, Mark 9, Luke 9. They have all those passages listed. They quote verse 9, or chapter 9, verse 48 of Luke. For it is the one who is least among you all who is the greatest. For it is the one who is least among you all who is the greatest. The greatest in the kingdom of God sees themselves as least important and humbly treat the least important as the most important. That's the take on this from our author, who again is John A. Beck, a walking tour of the Gospels. A walking tour of the Gospels experience the life and lessons of Jesus. We like to feel good about ourselves. Unfortunately, we often seek that sense of status by comparing ourselves to others using metrics like athleticism, intelligence, beauty, popularity, and wealth. What counts for status in the kingdom of God? The question surfaced among the 12 in part because most of them were Galileans who were hungry for respect. When we look at Galilee stories in the Old Testament, we do not find the powerful founding stories of Judea. Stories about Abraham and Sarah, Naomi, Ruth, and David. Rather, we find troubling stories of Israel's apostasy, stories about Jeroboam, Ahab, and Jezebel. This legacy led Galileans to crave recognition and status not provided by their regional backstory. On the way back to Capernaum, an argument broke out among the disciples about who was the greatest, and it wasn't the one and only time they had that debate. When they arrived at the house in Capernaum, Jesus answered their question with two illustrations. The first, using a child. Whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, Matthew 18:4. Jesus treated children as valuable members of society, much as the Old Testament did. Matthew 19:14, Psalm 127, 3 through 5, and Psalm 128, 3 and 4. But here he is using the general attitude of his culture that perceived children as second rate. The extended family needed contributors who played a role in food production and in protecting the household. Little children did little to help with either, and so were regarded as of less importance. Jesus uses that perspective to teach a lesson on kingdom status. The highest status in the kingdom of God belonged to those who regarded themselves as if they were a child. The second related picture is that of host, Matthew 18:5, Mark 9:37, Luke 9:48. In the ancient Near East, any visitor from outside the household received lavish attention from the host. Other household duties gave way to making sure the visitor was well fed, provided with water, aromatics, and protection. But note who receives this attention in Jesus' example: the children within the household rather than the visitor. Thus, the greatest in the kingdom of God are those who see themselves as least important and humbly treat the least important as the most important. I had a thought. I know that'll surprise you. I had a thought just as we got into the beginning of this, and I didn't want to put my thought forward before the author here. But I'm reminded of how often it tells us that God is opposed to the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. Maybe this picture of priorities in the kingdom is reminding us that if we are prideful, we're going to have trouble interacting with God in prayer or anything else, because we will have put ourselves up. Again, Paul will write, do not think of yourselves more highly than you ought to think. And then again, with it flipped, think of others. Not just don't think of yourself more highly, but also think of others more highly than you think of yourself. That's the kingdom value system. And it is not like our world's value system at all, where we put ourselves below and others above. But that's the way of the kingdom. And so the first will be last, and the last will be first. It's a way to keep from being frustrated because we didn't get from people what we thought we deserved from them. We didn't get the thank you. We didn't get the recognition. We're better than them. How come they're getting that attention? It's that part of that fallen human nature that resides in all of us, that we do that comparison thing. Oh, I'm better than him at that. What's the big deal about him? Or her, whichever the case may be, wherever you're going with that. But that's the kingdom. The first will be last. The last will be first. The servant is the leader. And that's why in our church, those who are on the trustee board, those who are on the ministry leadership council, we refer to ourselves as servant leaders. Servant leaders. We want to set that example of serving and not making much of ourselves. Jesus gives us the best, most vivid picture of what that looks like when that night in which he is going to be betrayed in that upper room, he takes on the approach of a servant. He binds up his outfit, his clothing, so that he can go around and wash the feet of the disciples. And they were flabbergasted. Peter refuses to let Jesus do it.